So my creators, today I want to show you how you can do well on your task 1 for pie charts. So it's from IELTS 7 test 4 task 1. The pie charts below show unit of electricity production by fuel source in Australia and France in 1980 and 2000. As you can see, we have 4 pie charts here. So this one's for Australia, this one's for France. So as you can see, let's get started without further ado. So first of all, I have to perforate this one, then I'm going to write no rule, then I'm going to write 2 body paragraphs for each categories. So let's get started without further ado. So the pie charts compare the amount of electricity produced using 5 different sources of fuel, let's say, in 2 countries over 2 separate years. As you can see, we have this introduction in a different way. It's written already. Now we have great introduction and the simplest way, in the clearest way possible. So I'll mention years in the oral section. So I'll move to oral, where I'll start writing with overall the total electricity production increased dramatically from 180 to 2000 in both Australia and France. Sorry about this, Australia and France. So we have this one here, while the totals for both countries were similar. They were big differences. There were big differences in the fuel sources used. Okay, now we have an overall view. Overall, where we mentioned that we have overall total electricity production increased dramatically from 1980 to 2000 in both Australia and France. We have mentioned what countries, what years here. Whilst the totals for both countries were similar, there were big differences in the fuel source used. Okay, we have explaining it in everything into detail, that it's going really great. Now I'll start with the body paragraph. So we'll start with this. Coal was used to produce 50 of the total 100 units of electricity in Australia in 1980, rising to 130 out of 170 units in 2000. As you can see that we mentioned the most important details here. By contrast, I'll move by contrast. Nuclear power became the most important fuel source in France in 2000, producing almost 75% of the country's electricity. Well, as you can see, we have here that we mentioned the most important parts in the detail, like we talked about coal in Australia and nuclear power in France. So that's what's very important. And don't forget that if you don't have synonyms for this fuel source or other stuffs, you better repeat it instead of making a mistake. Okay, so if you don't have another word to replace these words, instead repeat instead of making mistakes. Okay, so don't forget that. So, and I'll start to move to another body paragraph. I'll start saying Australia depended on hydropower. As you can see, we have hydropower here also mentioning, and that we have to mention this in our body paragraph. So hydropower for just 25%, for just under 25% of its, well, it's instead of 25%, I'll be right. It's not a percentage. Sorry about this. It's not. Well, here I'm somehow calculating and making with 25%, but it's not given in 20% in percentage. It's actually given in units. We have to pay attention to this as well. Of its electricity in both years, but the amount of electricity produced using this type of power fell from 5 to only 2 units in France. Oil. So about this oil, on the other hand, remained a relatively important fuel source in France. So, but its use declined in Australia. Both countries relied on natural gas for electricity production significantly more in 1980 than in 2000. So we mentioned everything into the detail, that we talked about the aspects and addressed all important parts, and we didn't forget anything important. That here especially this part is the most important, one of the most important, I would say, because we talked about the largest figures here. And don't forget that these ones are given in units, but somehow after a little bit of calculation I come up with 25% and 75%. So if you have any questions, you can leave in the comments. I'll be more than glad to answer any questions. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And if you have a hard time to understand, please have these 2 tables near you so that you can understand more detailed while I'm explaining, while I'm writing these ones. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.